we're gonna break down 5 drum patterns inspired by Anjunadeep artists, so you can bring that deep driving groove into your own tracks. Hey everyone, this is Lala Reddy from Abstract Music Lab, and I'm stoked to be here on PML's channel. So let's jump right in and let's start with drum group number 1. So let's listen to drum group number 1, Alone. In context. Really groovy, dark bass line, really groovy percussion as well. And this is really helpful if you're going to something more like Tin Liquor, Yodel, which is a bit more aggressive, more groovy, or even if you're just using a plucky bass like this one. And for this, we have a couple of elements here in the percussions that set this groove apart. First, let's start with the kick. The kick over here is a bit more aggressive. It's a bigger kick, it's strong, it has a sharp transient as you can listen to, and it's paired with a clap. You can see how the clap is really deep, and a lot of that deepness comes from the EQing as well. You can see that we have this boost over here in the EQ, and you can also take some of the transients depending on the sample that you're using. But what really makes this really groovy is actually this tom over here. So listen to it. This gives a lot of swing to this groove, and if you look into the MIDI of the groove, it's essentially playing on the 4 if you listen to 1/16. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, and it's always nice when you play it on the 4th or on the 3rd, because that helps you complement that counterbeat feeling, as you can listen here. And you can also sometimes have it all the time. That works, but it sometimes can be a little bit tiring because it's tom all the time. So one thing that you can do is pair it with the rim, just to create some other sounds in the sound as well. And one thing that it's important to mention here is that the tom, even though it's saying that it's in E, we're using this tom in E-4, which is C. This kick is in F. So if you think about it, C is the 5th of F, therefore it works, it pairs really well. One thing that I would recommend is either to put in the same note as the kick, or to put in the 5th of the kick, because that complements really well. Going into the cymbals, what makes this really nice first and foremost is this 16th hat over here. This gives some speed to it, but what I really like is when you add this hat loop. Can you see how when you add this offbeat hat, it just makes your shoulder dance a little bit more? But since we're talking about something a bit more aggressive, you can add open hats as well. And you can see how that brings a bit more energy to your groove. If you want to bring the energy of the groove even further, what you can also do here is add this ride. The important thing in this groove is not to add everything all at once and to pace yourself, because more aggressive grooves like this don't require so much percussion, so you have to pace your elements to not make them repetitive over time. When is the best time to use this kind of drum groove? This is really good for laid back, more organic, chill vibe kind of songs, and you can listen to a lot of this in prof songs in Anjunadeep. So groove number 2, let's listen to it. Let's listen in context. We have gone from a bit more aggressive to a lot chiller. And with this, there's a lot of differences in the percussions as well. First, let's start with the kick. You can notice here that there isn't many transients over here. The kick is still there, it's still really big in the sound, but it's a bit rounded and it's not so transient-y. And if we add the claps as well, they're really washed out. They have a lot of atmosphere as well, because we want that atmosphere into the sound. Sometimes you can use your own kick as a way to do the tom, or you can add more toms as these ones over here. different than the ones that we had before. This one is supposed to be more of a call and response to the kick. So we have the kick in the position 2 instead of the position 4 or 3 as we had before. Since we're talking about a more organic groove, having some organic loops as well help a lot because they're going to help give that organic feeling to your groove. And you can listen to them alone over here. These are more Foleys with a bit of a shaker. The emphasis on the hats are not so big over here. So if you listen, the hat over here is closed and it's not so prominent. What completes the texture a lot here is these shakers over here. You have this one, and you have this one. In context, without them. See how these are the ones that are giving the emphasis in the sound. And if you want to check the MIDI, just so we can check everything how it is. Nothing really big here in the processing as well. And we also complement this with some hat loops. But listen how natural sounding, listen how organic they're sounding as well, combined with the close hat. Just so you can listen again to the rhythm with the melodies. You can see how it's a lot more about the feeling, about the chillness of the sound. And that organic vibe is just really good because the melody sits really well on top of the percussions. But now let's go to drum groove number 3. So now we're in drum group number 3, and this is what we're listening today. With everything in context. This is a really classic dance floor kind of focused percussion group. You can listen to a lot of this groove in selected songs. It's become really common, especially on Spotify. But what is it about? So let's start over here with the kick. You can see that the kick is really punchy over here, different than the first kick and the second kick. This one has a really sharp transient and it has a lot of punch. Normally the kick is tuned to either G or A. I normally prefer G, but if you want to go a little bit more aggressive, A, because they work really well on dance clubs. They're not so low, they're not so high in the key as well. And they also have a solid clap that plays along with everything. But because this drum groove is almost like house music, it needs a hat. It needs an offbeat hat, as you can listen over here. And this is the foundation of this drum groove. So if you want to make something a little bit more dance floor focused, this is the way to go. But how can you differentiate and add more groove to this sound? You can add some offbeat sounds like a rim over here. You can see that again, 1/16, it's playing on the 4. And this is giving a lot of swing to the sound. You can often do this, especially with your percussions. So for example, you can pick your percussion, your clap, and do something like this as well. That also works if you do it with a clap, but if you want a bit more diversity in the sound, using a rim is also a good thing. You can do the same thing with your kick, for example, for extra swing. Instead of being super focused on the shakers and the organic elements, this one, the shaker loop, is a complementary thing. It's there to give a bit of swing, to give a little bit of background and ambience to the sound, but it's not the main thing. It relies mainly on the kick, the hat, and the clap, and these are the main elements of your groove. 2 pro tips that you can use in these kind of grooves. First, if you want a bit more energy, you can always just boost the hat. So boosting the hat just gives a lot more presence to that high end. Or you can also just, instead of having everything on the grid, you can just slightly misplace them. This gives a lot of swing and it makes things a little bit less robotic and a little bit better to listen to. And again, a bit more groovy and nicer in the clubs as well. But where should you use this? Especially on club tracks. This pattern is simple, but really effective. And then you can just build your bass line and your chord progression around this and you're good to go. Now let's talk about groove number 4 and we're going to talk about it right now. Let's listen only to this drum groove and let's get started with this. This is what I call the minimalist drum groove. Essentially, it doesn't have many elements. It's really minimal, and you can notice that from the 4 grooves that I've already showed to you, this is the first one without a clap. Listen to it again, but now in context. This is really useful, especially if you want to add a little bit more speed into the song, because sometimes adding the clap into your groove just slows things down a little bit. So if the focus, again, is more about the synth and the melodies, you don't always have to add everything into your groove. You don't always need a tom, you don't always need a clap, you don't always need all the elements. What are the crucial elements that I would recommend you adding into these? First, a 16th groove. It's really helpful. Notice about this, they have this EQ. There's a lot of but we don't want this, we just want the tss. So doing these drastic EQs sometimes help clean up some space for everything. Listen to it again in context. In addition to that, what we also want is an open hat here to give a little bit of rhythm. Without and with. And you can also add some hat loops into the sound, especially to add some textures. That's already really helpful, but when you add the tom here, and you can see how that already works really well. Important to mention, you don't always have to play the same note in your tom. Sometimes you can play a progression with it, as you can see it over here. In this progression, I'm just following the bass notes, so the tom is actually being tonal in the song, which complements the tonal balance of the drum groove as well, as you can listen to it again over here. See how I change this note? That's something that Ben Bohmer does a lot in his songs. If your synths and melody are powerful enough to tell a good story, you don't necessarily need to add lots of percussion in your grooves. Groove number 5, and this is how it sounds like. This is more about textured drums, and if you listen to that in context, why does that work? Essentially, we have a couple of things that are in this groove. First, if you listen to just drums and bass, without the bass, you can see how much the bass is pushing the drums over there. But there's a couple of things in the drums that are worth noting. First and foremost, you can see the kick. You can see that there's a lot of transient. It's a big kick as well. It's not a small kick. But what sets it apart is essentially the combination with the kick number 2 and the tom. And this gives a lot of swing to this groove. You can have this, as you can see here. You have the kick playing here on the downbeat. And then you also have over here, remember 1/16th, you have toms playing here on the 3rd. So you can see how this groove complements the original kick by adding a lot of swing into the sound that we had before. Now, in addition to that, you also have the claps, which are not the normal claps because they have a sweep into the clap. You don't necessarily need to use them in all tracks. So for example, this is a really cool way to make your drums a little bit less robotic and a little bit less of the same all the time. But in addition to that, you can have some extra claps just to intensify the rhythm. As usual, hat loops to complement. But notice how they're a lot more noisy, like a cymbal. And they're marking the beat along with the kick as you can listen. Sometimes you can go even further just using a noise generator from Serum. This is just noise, but listen how this decay is going to intensify as the progression goes along, almost being like a white noise for the sound. And one thing that it's really cool is this tom fill. I love using tom fills or clap fills into the sound, especially because they add a lot of anticipation to the next thing that is coming into the song. When I listen to that, I'm already expecting something to come. For example, listen to this reverse clap over here. Same thing with the drum fill. And this is a really nice way to start a drop or to add a new element by using these reverse clap right before the drop, as you can see it over here, or the tom fills, any tom fill, any clap fill, right at the end. Again, doesn't need to be at this specific point. For example, listen to what happens and how much smoother it is. I'm going to add the bass right after the turn over here. I'm just expecting something new to come, which is really, really cool. And that's pretty much it. Anytime that you want more texture into your percussions, you can use some of these elements to add a bit more energy, a bit more character into the sound. And you don't need to go only on drum group number 1 or number 3 or number 4. You can mix and match a bit of everything. You can use some of the things that you're learning on drum group number 5 into drum group number 2. Just remember to use the samples and the energy that matches the vibes of your melodics and your bass lines, as we've just seen over here. And that's it. I hope that you liked this video today. I hope that you learned these 5 grooves, and I hope that you're going to use it in your own tracks as well. If you want to dive deeper into these sounds, and if you want to discover where are these sounds coming from, you can check into PayML's website, and then here in the description below, there will be a link for the sound pack and also for the Melodic House Academy that features project files, samples, Serum presets for Melodic House. That is going to be really useful, including a start to finish of Melodic House done by me that has everything from the beginning to the end, including arrangement, composition, sound design, mixing, and mastering, all included into one course. This is Lil Already from Abstract Music Lab signing off. Ciao.